Merciful, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. Dear students, I would like to welcome you in lecture number 13, and today we will talk about gestures. We will know the meaning of gestures, types of gestures. We have three types: iconics, didactics, and beats. And then we will move to types of sign languages, and here we have two types: alternate sign languages and primary sign languages. And then we will move to the structure of signs. Here we have the structure of shape, orientation, location, and movement, and finally primes, faces, and finger spelling. Let us start with the meaning and the difference between sign and gestures. Although both sign and gestures involve the use of hands with other parts of the body, they are rather different. Sign is like speech and is used instead of speaking, whereas gestures are mostly used while speaking. So sign is like speech and is used instead of speaking, but gestures are mostly used while speaking. When you speak, we use gestures, but signs is like speech and is used instead of speaking. We may use sign without producing any sound, by just showing signs, but gestures, it is must or mostly used while speaking. When we speak, we use gestures. Examples of gestures are making a downward movement with one hand while talking about not doing very well in a class, or making a twisting motion. If I'm not, for example, downward movement, this is the downward movement. If you are not doing well or very well in a class, or making a twisting motion with one hand as you described, trying to open a bottle or a jar, this is called as twisting movement. So these are these two are called as gestures. When I say that I'm using now the gesture, I'm saying that I'm trying to open the jar, I'm trying to open the bottle, or my class wasn't so good today. So I'm using gestures here while speaking. Now the gestures are just part of the way in which meaning is expressed and can be observed while people are speaking and signing. Types of gestures. As I said, we have three types. The first one is called as iconics. Iconics are gestures that seem to be a reflection of the meaning of what is said. A reflection of what is said. As when we trace a square in the air with the finger while saying, I'm looking for a small box. So the first one, the first kind of gestures is called as ironic. It is like reflecting the meaning of what I said or what we said. For example, when I'm trying to say I'm looking for a small box, I may draw a square, in the air by doing like this. So I'll say that I'm looking for a small square. I'm looking for a small square. So this kind of gesture is called as iconics because it reflects the meaning of what is said, what we are trying to say by saying I'm looking for a small box. So this kind of drawing in the air, showing the square in the air, this kind of gesture is called as iconics. So by itself, an iconic gesture doesn't mean the same as what is said, but it may add meaning. So here we add meaning. I'm looking for a box. I'm looking for a small box. We add meaning to what is said. Another common group of gestures can be described as, this is a second group of gesture, which is called as didactics. The term didactic means pointing. When you point to something, we use gesture here. This is the second kind of gesture, which is called as didactic. Now the term didactic means pointing, and we often use gestures to point to things or to point to people. Now when we talk, Now, we can also use didactics in the current context, as when we use a hand to indicate a table with a cake on it and ask someone, would you like some cake? Now here I'm pointing to the cake, I'm pointing to the table here. Now this kind of pointing is called as a gesture. Which type of gesture? It is a didactic gesture. Now, would you like some cake? We can also use the same gesture and the same table with cake no longer in it. When we later say, the cake was delicious. Now, the cake was delicious. Again, I may point to the same table even if there is no cake. And this kind of gesture is called as didactics. Now, in this case, the gesture and the speech combine to accomplish successful reference to something that only exists in shared memory rather than in the current physical space. There are other gestures such as those described as beats. The third kind of gestures is called as beats, which are short, quick movements of the hand or fingers. These gestures accompany with rhyme of talk and are often used to emphasize parts of what is being said or to mark a change from describing events in a story to commenting on those events. As with other gestures, these hand movements accompany speech but are not typically used as a way of speaking. When hand movements are used in order to speak, we can describe them as part of a sign language. Now let us move to the types of sign languages. And as I said here, that there are two general categories of language involving the sign or the use of signs. We have alternate sign languages, and the second one is primary sign languages. Now, by definition, an alternate sign language is a system of hand signals developed by speakers for limited communication in a specific context where speech cannot be used. In some religions, for example, in some religions, orders where there are rules of silence restricted, alternate sign languages are used by, for example, monks among some Australian Aboriginal groups. There are periods when speech is avoided completely and the quite elaborate alternate sign languages are used instead. Now, less elaborate versions are to be found in some special working circumstances. For example, among bookmakers at British race courses or trades in commodity exchanges. In all these examples, the users of alternate sign languages have another first language that they can speak. The second type of sign languages, a primary sign language, which is the first language of a group of people who do not use a spoken language with each other. Now, British Sign Language, we have here British Sign Language, that is BSL, and we have also FSL, that is French Sign Language, as used for everyone communication among members of deaf communities of Britain and France, are primary sign languages. Contrary to popular belief, these different primary sign languages do not share identical signs and are not mutually intelligible. Now, British Sign Language is also very different from American Sign Language, ASL, which for historical reasons has more in common with French Sign Language. The structure of signs, they can be categorized according to the shape, orientation. Now here, as a natural language functioning in the virtual mode, American Sign Language, SAL, is designed for the eyes, not for the ears. In producing linguistic forms in American Sign Languages or language, signers use four key aspects of visual information. Now these are described as the articulatory parameters of American Sign Language in terms of shape, orientation, location, and movement. We can describe these parameters in the use of the common sign for thank you. The first one is shape and orientation. To describe the articulation of thank you in American Sign Language, we start with the shape or configuration of the hand or hands used in forming the sign. The shape may differ in terms of which fingers are used, whether the fingers are extended or bent, and the general configurations of the hand or hands. The configuration shown in the illustration is a flat hand, thank you, as I'm showing here, and not in the fist hand. We never say thank you, we say thank you, or a cupped hand. Now, the orientation of the hand is palm up rather than palm down. When you say thank you, the orientation of the hand is palm up, and the shape is fingers are extended. When signing thank you in other signs, the hand may be oriented in a number of other ways, such as the flat hand, palm hand towards signer, from used to indicate mine. The third structure of signs here, location, and the fourth is movement. Whatever the shape and the orientation of the hand or hands, there will be also a location or a place of articulation in relation to the head and upper body of the signer. In thank you, the sign begins near the mouth and ink is completed at the chest level. Near the mouth and completed at the chest level, this way. Some signs can only be distinguished on the basis of location, as in the difference between signing summer above the eyes and ugly below the eyes, because hand shape, palm orientation, and movement are the same in the both of these signs. In some, two-handed sign means medicine or ship. One hand acts as the base location while the other hand moves on and above it. The movement element in thank you is out and downward toward the receiver. The difference between faster and slower movement is signing also has an effect on meaning. If you are doing this fast or doing it slow, it has an effect on meaning. Now here we have prime spaces and finger spelling. The contrasting elements within these four general parameters can be analyzed into a set of features or primes. We say that flat hand is a prime in terms of shape and palm up is a prime in terms of orientation. Identifying each of these primes allows us to create a complete features analysis of every sign in much the same way as we can analyze the phonological features of spoken language. In addition to these parameters and primes, there are important functions served by non-manual components such as head movement, eye movement, and several specific types of facial expressions. Under normal circumstances, thank you is articulated with the head nod and smiling face. If a sentence is functioning as a question, it is typically accompanied by a rising of eyebrows, widened eyes, and a slight leaning forward of the head. Also, if a new term or name is encountered, signers can use finger spelling, which is a system of hand configurations conventionally used to represent the letters of the alphabet. From these brief descriptions, it is clear that American Sign Language is a linguistic system designed for the visual medium in face-to-face interaction. The majority of signs are located around the neck and head. If a sign is made near the chest or waist, it tends to be a two-handed sign. So this is all for today. We talked about gestures and we defined the meaning of gestures and the meaning of sign, what is the difference, and we said sign is like speech and is used instead of speaking with deaf people, but gestures are mostly used while speaking or when we speak. Second, we talked about the type or types of gestures, and we said that we have three types: iconics, and we have deictics, and finally beats. And then we talked about the types of sign languages, and we said that we have two types: alternate sign languages and primary sign languages. And finally, before that, we talked about the structure of signs, and we said that there are four points, four elements. We talked about the shape and orientation, and then about location and movement. And finally, it was about primes, faces, and finger spelling, and we said that these gestures can be used while speaking. I hope that you have enjoyed the lecture. See you again, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.